Have you ever lived that moment when the chart seems to whisper that it's now? Everything aligned, context, reading, confluence, small risk. You enter, the heart races, breathing changes. In a few seconds, the trade starts moving in your favor, and you feel that slight relief as if the universe were validating you. The cursor blinks over the close position button, and the profit floats on the screen like a fragile promise. 100 raise, 200, 300. And before the price reaches the planned target, you hit close. Profit in the pocket, feeling of security, relief, but right after the price keeps climbing goes exactly where you had predicted. And in the same instant that euphoria turns into frustration, something breaks inside you. Once again, fear beat the plan. This is the most destructive psychological addiction in modern day trading, the emotional dependence on immediate relief. An invisible addiction, disguised as prudence, dressed up as control, but that slowly corrodes your ability to profit. It's not on the chart, not in the strategy, not in the setup. It lives inside you, in the subtle chemistry of the brain, in the conditioned reflex to seek pleasure and flee pain at any cost. The trader believes he's operating the market, but in reality the market is operating his brain. What happens in that instant is not rational, it's dopamine. The same neurotransmitter that makes someone compulsively refresh social media or repeat a destructive habit. Every click on the close position button is a microdose of relief, a micro reward, a chemical pleasure spike that trains your nervous system to act not based on logic but on feeling. And the more times you give in to that impulse, the more the brain associates quick profit with survival. You turn into a crumb hunter, incapable of waiting for the banquet that the plan itself promised. The market isn't cruel, it simply reflects what you haven't yet mastered. And in that merciless mirror, the most common reflection is the addiction to the feeling of being right. Because holding a trade to the target isn't technically difficult. It's emotionally unbearable for those who still need constant validation. The dopamine-addicted trader doesn't seek results, he seeks relief. He doesn't want to win, he wants to stop feeling tension. And it's precisely this unconscious search for relief that destroys his equity curve. When you close a trade early, something inside you says, better a little than nothing. It sounds rational, but it's fear in disguise. Fear of losing what you already have, fear of seeing profit turn into loss, fear of being wrong, and, deeper than that, fear of not being good enough. The market awakens old memories. Moments when you were punished for making mistakes, criticized for waiting too long, or humiliated for believing in something that didn't work out. Every candle triggers dormant emotional triggers, and while you think you're analyzing price, you're actually reliving performance trauma. That's why this addiction is so dangerous. It doesn't look like an addiction. Yes, it disguises itself as caution. The trader says, I prefer to secure it, but what he's really securing is his own limitation. Every time he acts this way, the brain learns that escaping discomfort is more important than following the plan. And that's the point where consistency dies. Not on the chart, but in mental conditioning. Every trade closes not just an operation, but a neurological lesson. And if that lesson is feel relief and close, the habit takes root until it becomes identity. Over time, this behavior creates a perverse cycle. You trade, win little, lose big, feel anger, seek revenge, enter again, close early, blame yourself, promise to change, and repeat everything. They call it overtrading, but the more honest name would be emotional abstinence. The trader can't stand the emptiness of not being in the market. He needs the stimulus. He needs risk to feel alive. The screen becomes the mirror of his own dependence, and when every candle is a dopamine bait. The result is predictable. Mental exhaustion, misalignment with the plan, and ever smaller profits. The amateur confuses movement with progress. He believes that trading means evolving. The professional understands that the real game is resisting the need to act. He knows that control isn't in predicting the market, but in containing his own impulsivity. The amateur feels good when he clicks. The professional feels good when he waits. One seeks adrenaline, the other seeks asymmetry. And that's where the destiny of both is defined. But why is it so hard to break this addiction? Because it's socially reinforced. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to seek quick rewards, grades, praise, likes, notifications. Modern culture is built on the cult of instant gratification. Trading, on the contrary, is a temple of patience. It's the place where the hasty finance the disciplined, where every decision is a vote against impulsivity. The market doesn't punish those who err, it punishes those who don't learn. And as long as you keep seeking pleasure in the click instead of purpose in execution, you'll remain a servant of the same cycle. See, the dopamine addiction in trading is like compound interest in reverse. Every micro act of indiscipline adds to the previous one and creates an emotional debt. A debt of self-control. You start owing yourself confidence, clarity, and inner mastery. And the more you try to compensate for that debt with action, the deeper you sink. Because what the market charges isn't money, it's emotional structure. Without it, every profit becomes luck and every loss becomes drama. This addiction destroys your ability to profit, not because it makes you lose trades, but because it prevents you from maturing. And without maturity, the trader lives forever in trial and error mode, changing strategies, assets, mentors, but never the mind that operates them. He wants to change the method when what he needs to change is the brain that runs it. The market doesn't change to adapt to you. You're the one who needs to evolve to operate in harmony with it. The way out begins with a simple but brutal decision. Accept discomfort. Accept that the right path almost always hurts more than the wrong one. That patience is paradoxically the most expensive price of financial freedom. That resisting the urge to click is the new winning. Every time you don't give in to the impulse, you earn compound interest in self-control. And every time you do give in, you pay with the most expensive currency in trading, your confidence. The amateur trader measures progress in pips. The professional measures it in calm. And that calm doesn't come from the result, but from mastery over one's own mind. When inner silence starts to be worth more than the sound of the button, you're finally leaving the cycle. Because the market doesn't reward those who feel pleasure in trading, but those who feel purpose in waiting. The psychological addiction that destroys your ability to profit is the same one that destroys any addiction, the inability to deal with boredom. And until you learn to love boredom, the market will continue to be your cruelest mirror. But the problem is even deeper. The problem is deeper because the dopamine addiction isn't just a behavioral issue, it's an identity issue. The brain doesn't understand trading as work, but as a game. And every game needs stimulus, uncertainty, reward. That's why the market becomes for many a roulette wheel disguised as a profession. The chart is the most sophisticated casino ever created. It offers the illusion of control within chaos. And that illusion is the perfect drug for the mind addicted to feeling something. You believe you're in the market to make money, but deep down you're there to feel emotion, to feel power, to feel validation. And until you understand that, you'll stay trapped in the same cycle of self-punishment. The mature trader realizes that emotion is the enemy. The immature trader still confuses it with motivation. And the difference between the two isn't in technique, but in level of awareness. This psychological addiction is subtle because it imitates reasoning. You convince yourself that you did the right thing when, in reality, you just sought relief. And that's how the trader destroys his own plan. Not because he doesn't know what to do, but because he can't stand waiting. The addicted mind doesn't tolerate the absence of stimulus. It prefers error to inertia. That's why you catch yourself opening trades without context just to fill the void. The market becomes the drug that numbs the discomfort of being human. Every rushed trade is an escape from something you don't want to face, and the price of escaping is always higher than the price of facing it. The trader who can't stand boredom will never reach consistency, because consistency is mastery of boredom. It's the ability to repeat the right thing even when there's no emotion at all. The amateur needs emotion to act. The professional needs structure to remain. Think about it. Most people don't fail at trading due to lack of knowledge, but due to excessive sensation. They seek emotion in a place that demands neutrality. It's like trying to swim in a stormy ocean because the calm sea seems boring. But in the ocean of finance, those who seek emotion end up drowning in volatility. The professional learns to float in the silence of still waters. He understands that true power isn't in controlling the market, but in not being dragged by it. Dopamine is treacherous because it offers the sensation of progress without real progress. Every micro-victory generates a pleasure spike that replaces the genuine pleasure of building something. It's the same mechanism as social media. Every like, a micro-reinforcement. Every green trade, a micro-ecstasy. But none of them sustain the long term, and when the dopamine drops, the trader needs more stimulus. He increases risk, enters with bigger size, ignores the stop, all to feel again that brief moment of power. It's the same pattern as any chemical dependency, only the drug is the market itself. This addiction changes the brain's structure. It reduces tolerance to boredom and increases impulsivity. The trader starts operating all the time, chasing the same high he felt at the beginning of the journey when every candle felt like a roller coaster. And the more he tries to recapture the original sensation, the further he gets from the serenity needed to trade well. It's an invisible prison built with bars of pleasure. The amateur believes mastering the market is understanding the chart. The professional knows it's understanding his own nervous system, because the market isn't made of prices, it's made of human emotions turned into numbers, and those who don't understand their own emotions will never understand others. Technical reading without emotional reading is blind. It's like flying a plane looking only at the dashboard, ignoring internal turbulence. That's why true mastery begins when you stop fighting the market and start fighting yourself. The challenge isn't finding the perfect entry, it's finding the balance point between control and surrender. You don't control the outcome, but you control the reaction. And it's that reaction that defines whether profit will be sustainable or just another random string of wins without consistency. The amateur trader measures success in money. The professional measures it in emotional control. But this addiction also feeds on something even deeper, the illusion of time. The addicted trader lives on the shortest possible timeline, the now. He can't see the long term because his brain has been hijacked by urgency. He trades like someone who needs to prove something, like someone who wants to speed up a process that is, by nature, slow. The result is the constant frustration of someone who plants a seed and pulls it up before it grows. The market rewards the patient gardener, not the impatient hunter. What the amateur calls a missed opportunity, the professional calls a patience test, because a trader's true capital isn't financial, it's psychological. And every trade is a negotiation with your own brain. When you give in to the impulse, you sell a piece of your future for pennies of present pleasure. When you resist, you accumulate compound interest in discipline. Consistency is just the accumulated result of hundreds of correct emotional micro-decisions. Dopamine promises you control but turns you into a hostage. Silence feels unbearable and noise becomes an addiction. You believe you need to always be doing something, when in reality the secret is in stopping doing. Action is easy, inaction is art. And the professional trader is an artist of not doing. He watches, waits, considers, not because he's cold, but because he understands that the market is a mirror that amplifies every internal emotion. Those who trade agitated multiply chaos. Those who trade calm amplify clarity. The real challenge for the trader isn't winning, it's sustaining the mental state in which winning is possible. That requires detachment, and detachment is the opposite of addiction. Detachment is accepting that profit doesn't define who you are, that loss doesn't diminish you, and that process matters more than outcome. While the amateur seeks sensation, the professional seeks meaning. The amateur wants to prove something to the world. The professional wants to prove something to himself. And what he proves every day is that emotional mastery is the rarest form of freedom. Notice, the market tests what you love. If you love profit, it will give you losses. If you love emotion, it will give you boredom. If you love being right, it will make you wrong, until you love the process more than any outcome. At that point, the addiction breaks, because there's no dopamine that can compete with the peace of being aligned with the plan. And it's in that peace that true profitability lives, not the profitability of numbers, but of the mind. But there is one last level of this addiction, more dangerous than all the others: self-deception. Self-deception is the most sophisticated addiction the trader develops because it convinces you that you're curing the problem while actually feeding it. It disguises itself as progress, study, improvement. You start believing you're evolving because you're watching videos, testing setups, changing platforms, reading books, but all of that is very often just another form of escape. The addicted brain doesn't seek transformation, it seeks distraction. It feeds on the feeling of doing something even when that something changes absolutely nothing. You trade the click of the trading button for the click of the learning button, but the pattern is the same: dopamine. You feel the same excitement, the same impulse, the same chemical rush, and so the cycle continues. The mind becomes addicted to movement, and any pause feels like regression. That's why the average trader can't stand a day without trading. He doesn't understand that sometimes the most profitable act is simply doing nothing. Self-deception manifests in subtle phrases. I needed to get out earlier, the market was weird. I took the profit, that's great. Today wasn't my day. They are acceptable justifications, but emotionally dishonest. They prevent you from seeing the repeated pattern. The amateur trader lives in constant denial. He knows what needs to change, but the fear of facing his own weakness is greater than the desire to evolve. That's why he prefers to believe the problem is outside. In the market, the broker, the volatility, the algorithm, anything except himself. But the market is a perfect mirror. It doesn't lie. It simply returns the reflection of your mindset in the form of results. The disciplined trader sees consistency. The impulsive sees chaos, the fearful sees threats, the arrogant sees traps, and the addicted sees only stimuli. You see the market as you are, not as it is. That's the truth few can bear. Self-deception is dangerous because it generates a feeling of mastery. You think you're learning, but you're just reinforcing the same neural circuits. It's like trying to put out fire with gasoline. Dopamine continues to run everything, only now dressed up as rationality. And as long as the trader doesn't recognize this cycle, he never truly evolves. He just changes the format of the dependency. The professional understands that real evolution isn't exciting. It's monotonous, repetitive, almost boring. It's like emotional gym. The same exercises, the same movements, until the mind is conditioned not to react. And precisely because it's boring, few persist. Dopamine wants novelty. Consistency demands repetition. The choice between the two defines the trader's destiny. The addicted mind is like a child who needs attention all the time. If you don't give it a toy, it creates a problem to distract itself. That's why when you try to change, the brain resists. It feels withdrawal from stimulus. You feel empty, restless, disconnected. That's the point where many give up and return to the cycle, because they confuse silence with failure when in reality it's the first sign of healing. Overcoming this addiction isn't an event, it's a process. It doesn't happen on a day of extraordinary profits, but in 1,000 small moments of self-control. Every time you respect the plan, you reprogram your brain. Every time you endure the discomfort of price pulling back and don't touch the mouse, you strengthen a new identity. The professional trader isn't born from one big win. He's born from the sum of small invisible resistances. The amateur seeks the perfect trade. The professional seeks the perfect mind. And that mind isn't cold, it's trained. It feels fear but doesn't obey it. It feels euphoria but doesn't move because of it. The mature trader turns emotion into information. He observes what he feels without identifying with what he feels. He understood that the market doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. You can see it in the eyes of veteran traders. They're in no hurry. They don't react. They don't need to prove anything. Trading, for them, is an act of observation, not survival. They learned that true control isn't in getting the market right, but in not being dominated by it. While the amateur fights to make money, the professional works to not lose his mind. And that's why the psychological addiction destroys your ability to profit, because it hijacks your attention. Attention is the trader's most valuable asset. Whatever the mind focuses on grows. When your attention is on the result, you lose the process. When it's on the process, the result happens naturally. Dopamine wants to distract you. Consciousness wants to direct you. And the market rewards those who learn to listen to the second voice. The addicted trader thinks in daily profits. The professional thinks in profits compounded from consciousness. Every emotionally correct decision is an invisible deposit in the consistency account. Every loss of control is an early withdrawal from the future. Psychological balance is the true capital that multiplies the financial one. It's what allows you to survive long enough for probabilities to do their work. You don't need to be the smartest or the fastest, you just need to be the most stable. The market eliminates extremes, the greedy, the impatient, the emotional. Only the balanced remain. The trader who wins is the one who learned to lose without destroying himself and to win without exalting himself, because he understands that trading isn't a war against the market, but a journey of self-mastery. Dopamine seeks intensity. The professional trader seeks integrity. Intensity is living from peaks. Integrity is sustaining balance between them. When you understand that, the market stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror of self-knowledge. You stop fighting losses and start learning from them. You realize the goal was never to profit every day, but to become someone capable of trading every day without losing himself in the process. And finally, there is a turning point. One day you wake up and realize the chart no longer provokes you. That green and red on the screen no longer speed up your pulse. That you can observe without reacting. On that day, the addiction dies. And when it dies, something new is born. True freedom. Not financial freedom, but emotional freedom. The freedom to no longer depend on the market to feel alive. Because the market isn't the problem. It's the mirror that shows you where there is still slavery inside you. The free trader is the one who trades in peace even when losing. Because he knows loss is part of the game, and the game is just a metaphor for life. Winning at trading is merely a reflection of having won against yourself. And if there is a secret to breaking the psychological addiction that destroys your ability to profit, it is this. Teach your brain that waiting is the new way of winning. Every time you resist the impulse, you write a new neural story. Every time you follow the plan, even when fear screams, you invest in the trader you're becoming. Dopamine screams for haste, but purpose whispers patience. Choose the whisper. Because in the end, the market doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself every time you trade purpose for pleasure, plan for impulse, discipline for emotion. The market is just the mirror. And the reflection it shows is the sum of all the times you chose to feel instead of evolve. When that choice changes, everything changes. The trader who decides to break this addiction needs to understand one brutal truth. There is no victory without emotional abstinence. It's impossible to achieve financial freedom while remaining a slave to your own mind. And paradoxically, what destroys most people isn't lack of technique. It's the addiction to feeling too much. As long as emotion continues to guide the click, the market will continue to be a mirror of frustration. The cure doesn't happen on the chart, but in the silence between one trade and the next. In that instant when you choose to wait, even though everything inside you wants to act. That instant is where the trader is reborn. It's the exact point where the old pattern begins to die. Every second of resistance to impulsivity is a small invisible victory that the market will never show in pips, but that destiny will reward in consistency. You don't become a professional on the day you make a big profit, but on the day you can watch profit and feel nothing. That's the dividing line between the addicted and the free. One reacts, the other chooses. The true professional doesn't seek emotion, he seeks control. He understands that trading is a spiritual practice disguised as finance. It's meditation in market form. It's the daily exercise of detachment, discipline, and surrender. The ordinary trader seeks to beat others. The awakened trader seeks to beat his own ego, and that victory is silent, solitary, and often misunderstood by those still trapped in the dopamine cycle. The psychological addiction destroys your ability to profit because it prevents you from seeing time as an ally. It makes you believe you need to win now, but now is just a fraction of an infinite process. When you trade urgency for constancy, the market stops being an adversary and becomes a partner. It educates you, shapes you, tests you, and every test passed is proof that the mind is maturing. Think about how you started. Every click was pure emotion. Every candle felt like a roller coaster. Today, perhaps you already understand what's at stake. It's not money, it's consciousness. The evolved trader doesn't measure gains in numbers, he measures them in reactions. The less he is shaken, the more he advances. He understood that profit is a natural consequence of stability, and stability is a consequence of a mind detoxed from dopamine. To break the addiction, you need to create new mental circuits. You need to associate pleasure with the process, not the result. You need to feel pride when you respect the stop, not just when you hit the target. You need to celebrate patience, not haste. The brain only changes when pleasure changes address. As long as pleasure lives in emotion, the addiction lives. When pleasure moves to discipline, the addiction dies. This requires practice, it requires constant awareness. The trader who heals is the one who observes his own impulses without judging them, but also without obeying them. He understands that the addicted mind will try to sabotage him and still chooses to stand firm. That is true power, not eliminating the impulse, but not acting on it. Every time you watch the desire to click and don't click, a new synapse forms, and over time dopamine loses strength. Silence starts to be worth more than euphoria. Most never get there because they give up halfway through the process. They want results before transformation. But the market is wise. It delivers lessons first, profits later. And those who run from the lessons lose both. Consistency isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You return to the same challenges, only at higher levels, and every time you resist a little longer, the brain records a new memory that you are in control. The professional trader lives in peace with what he doesn't control. He doesn't fight the market, he dances with it. When price pulls back, he watches. When it advances, he watches. He understands that his only task is to remain present and lucid. The addicted mind wants dominance, the mature mind wants harmony. And it's in that harmony that sustainable profit lives. Not the profit of one day, but the profit of a lifetime. So ask yourself, what really keeps you in this cycle? Is it fear of losing or fear of waiting? Is it the desire to win or the need to feel? When you answer honestly, the addiction begins to weaken, because the power of addiction lies in the unconscious. When it's brought to light, it loses strength, and when it loses strength, the trader awakens. Awakening is realizing that the market was never about money. It was always about who you become while trying to conquer it. The addicted trader seeks profit and finds pain. The conscious trader seeks mastery and finds freedom. The difference between them isn't in strategy, but in consciousness. And consciousness is something the market can't give. It can only demand. The psychological addiction that destroys your ability to profit is, in truth, the deepest invitation the market makes to you. The invitation to evolve, because when you beat dopamine, you beat yourself. And when you beat yourself, the market becomes small before the greatness of your mind. In the end, it all comes down to one sentence. The market doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself when you don't know yourself. Know yourself, and the chart will become just an extension of your calm.